Hi, I'm Dan and welcome to Why You Should Play, a show where I break down the components of games I love. This week we're talking about Marvel's Spider-Man, so let's see why you should slip on your finest tights and take a swinging tour of New York. When I was little, my parents had a Christmas strategy. They would give me one present in my stocking, but not just any present, a present they thought would keep me interested for long enough that I wouldn't come and wake them up stupidly early. On Christmas Day 2000, a goofy little 7-year-old Dan woke up to find Spider-Man for the PS1 in his little stocking. My parents got their line that year and I got to feel like my favourite superhero for a few hours. There have been some great Spider-Man games since then, but none of them have quite lived up to that experience. Until Marvel's Spider-Man. I traded in the little pajamas for gross jogging bottoms, but the feeling of agility, freedom, and just straight up Spider-Man shit is dead on. Marvel's Spider-Man is an open-world action game developed by Insomniac Games, the developers of such great games as Spyro the Dragon, Ratchet & Clank, and the much underappreciated Sunset Overdrive. You play as a 23-year-old Peter Parker who is just trying to scrape by while being a superhero. Throughout the story, you will fight some of his classic enemies and meet some familiar faces in the Spider-Man universe. The first thing that makes this game so appealing is its standalone nature. It isn't based on a movie or a cartoon, this is Insomniac's own Spider-Man. Of course it is inspired by the stories that come before it, but it isn't beholden to some other canon. No excruciatingly monotone narration.
Who am I? I'm Spider-Man.
It is bright, charming, and it moves like a damn dream. Swinging. It's all the rage when talking about a Spider-Man game or mid-40s couples who want to spice up their sex life. You see, it has to be right. Swinging around New York City is what Spider-Man does. The movement can't just serve the purpose of getting from one place to another, it has to be a game all to itself, and this game gets that. When barreling through the streets of Manhattan, there are a few tools at your disposal. Basic swinging, web zips that pull you to whatever direction you want, and leaping to points in the environment and pushing off them to gain speed. This is simple but conceals a lot of complexity. Keeping momentum involves picking when to end your swing. Do it too late and you'll go upwards, but if you hit the right timing, you shoot straight forward. When to change direction and setting yourself up to intersect with the push-off point is paramount. There are some upgrades that enhance this action too. Pressing a button right as you're leaping can give you an extra boost, or even a system that allows you to do tricks while in the air. All of this converges to make a traversal system that is active, and the animations elicit an exhilarating speed. There is a fast travel system in the game, and it has these fantastic little animations of Spider-Man riding the subway, but the swinging is so good I basically never used it. I had to go out of my way to get this footage to show you it. Of course, swinging ain't all you're going to be doing. There's bad guys who need an ass kicking. There's a couple ways of dealing with the naughty folks you come across in Spider-Man. There's stealthily webbing them before they know what's happened, and then there's straightforward just kicking ass. The foundation for both of these systems work from the Batman model. Combat is a dance of punching and kicking opponents around until your spidey senses prompt a dodge, and then you continue the beating. It does a good job of spicing up the enemies too, like shielded enemies that you have to dodge under, and enemies with guns that require you to think tactically about the ranges you're at and how you're going to move between enemies. Stealth is a more slinky affair of jumping around higher surfaces and picking enemies off one by one. Now this is all stuff we've seen before, but there are two things that really set these systems apart. One is the mobility. Spider-Man is a nimble dude. In combat, it is easy to zip around the battlefield and reposition. While stealth isn't slow and plodding, you are constantly on the offensive as opposed to constantly avoiding threats. Then there's the gadgets and the powers. This Spider-Man isn't a simple fist and web kind of fella, he has a lot of different kinds of tools in his arsenal. This is where Insomniac's weapon design chops really come into play. There are different kinds of web shooters, web grenades, electrified webs, and even little drone friends. Then there are suit powers that could be passive benefits or big area of effect moves. There's even a skill tree that gives you access to new moves as you play through the game. The fact that there is a move list in this game tells you a lot about the kind of game you're getting. The variety of tools keeps the game fresh throughout. You aren't stuck in a rote pattern of punching and dodging, you're always thinking about what tools you could be using right now. While sneaking, you may use your impact web to be able to take a couple of guys standing next to each other without alerting the rest of the enemies. In combat, you might try and clump enemies together with your movement so you can incapacitate them all with a web grenade. The combination of active web slinging, nimble combat, and swift stealth is the foundational choreography of this game, but it is elevated by the playground you do it all in. You've been watching this game move for a while now, so I don't have to tell you how beautiful it is. I mean, I can see these people's pores. However, I do want to tell you how well the environment is designed. This is clearly a recreation of a real city, it's New York, but it doesn't feel living. There are a lot of people, but interaction is charming yet limited. What is there, though, is a perfectly designed playground for Spider-Man. You can see how it's been constructed for traversal. There are jump-off points everywhere, and there's an ever-changing verticality. Each area provides different traversal challenges. The park, for example, makes you stay low to the ground, while more built-up areas ask you to find the ideal route without slowing down to run up a building. It is jam-packed with things to do as well. There are collectibles like backpacks, crimes to stop, enemy strongholds to siege, pigeons to chase, and even story side missions that follow a little narrative of their own. None of these take very long, none of them are particularly complicated, and none of them are filled with new mechanics. However, all of them are these fantastic bite-sized motivators to play with the stellar core mechanics that I've mentioned. It's that piece of candy effect. Oh, I'll do this, then this, then this. It trades on the fact that the feeling of this game is so good that fluffing these little things up would end up lessening the experience. And like I said, swinging is so good that getting between them is fun as well. The only time this game falters is when it takes you out of that core gameplay. For example, there are sequences where you play as other characters. I love the idea behind this. Spider-Man's friends should be capable, and they play a major part in the narrative. So go ahead, give them their own small gameplay sections. Great idea. Problem is, these sections are very restrictive stealth sequences. You have maybe one or two tools to play with, and it often feels like there is the critical path or there's failure. When compared with the dynamism of playing as Spider-Man, I ended up dreading these sections. But I do see how their utility is effective. They add personality, and that tone is a real strength of this game. Why is Spider-Man so popular? The idea of web slinging is cool. He pulls off a bodysuit pretty well, but others do that. Yeah, that's some of it, but most of it, in my mind, is charm and relatability. It's what solidifies him as a classic superhero. He isn't a billionaire, he isn't a super spy, and he certainly isn't a god. He is the perpetual underdog. The people he fights are usually bigger than him, and he takes the mickey while he kicks their ass. He wants to see the best in people, and he's a little naive. We see so much of all of this in this game. Peter Parker is getting evicted, and we see him have to track down a dumpster with all this stuff in it. We see his relationships and how he doesn't quite know how to handle them. This all makes you want to root for him, and we see so much of Peter Parker trying to help people in this game. It throws these fantastically well characterized villains at you, and Peter is throwing out quips while trying to both defeat and help them in most ways. Now, none of this would hit as well as it does if it wasn't for some remarkable voice acting. Yuri Lowenthal does a great job of representing a thoughtful character, but also pulls off Spider-Man's cheesy quips, and the rest of the cast are just as solid. The overall narrative is not particularly strange for the current Marvel style that you see in the movies, but I would argue that the characterization is even better. Marvel's Spider-Man nails every facet of what makes Spider-Man, Spider-Man. He is a nimble web swinger who dances his way across rooftops. He is a tactical fighter who uses his finesse, environment and set of tools to his advantage. He is corny, naive, and despite trying to help the worst parts of society, he always has time to crack a joke. He isn't just a superhero. Peter Parker is a young man trying to work out the world around him. He is kind. That is why you should play Marvel Spider-Man. And if you enjoyed this little game recommendation, don't forget to subscribe for a new one every Wednesday. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.